Hi, this is Kristen Zook, and I am going to talk a little bit about tort liability. First of all, what is it? Well, basically, it's the understanding that individuals are liable for the consequences of their behavior, or sometimes lack of behavior, can result in injury to others. This can be physical injury, this can also be emotional injury, among other things. And basically, we'll talk about intentional and negligent. So intentional meaning that they were trying to cause harm. Negligent meaning like a lack of behavior, lack of supervision, those kinds of things caused harm. And this is the most common area of the law that teachers will face personal liability from their behaviors interacting with students. The first case that I looked at was actually in one of the readings, and this is Frame versus Camo. Frame was an 8th grade student, and Camo was a science teacher who was subbing for the class at the time. And during that time, the student, among other students, were acting out during a test and asked to leave. And for a while, this one student, Frame, did not listen, did not comply, and so the teacher tried to physically remove him at the same time that the student was standing up. And the student kind of tripped and fell, ended up hitting the podium, hitting the board, and the teacher still removed him from the class, and it doesn't really indicate that he was too worried or checked on the student or anything. And therefore, the student's family sued the teacher for assault and battery. And it's interesting because the court actually said that that it was assault and battery, but that the behaviors of the teacher were necessary based on the student not complying. So I thought that was really interesting because I don't think that's typically not what I would have thought would have happened in that situation. I think that in my school district, the teacher would have had some type of discipline for placing his hands on a student, because that's pretty well known that we are not to do that to students. I think something proactive that could have helped with this, it said that the teacher was a substitute, and I don't know if it was a teacher that was in the school at all times or just at this time was substituting. And so I would question what kind of training substitutes have in things like physical contact with students, classroom, like behavior management, some things like that maybe could help that teacher know how to interact with students in this situation. And I think this goes back to just the teachers have a responsibility to keep students safe. And so all of your behaviors have to show that you understand that. And physically touching students is never a good idea and can always lead to some unintended consequences. And so that's something I think all teachers need to be really careful about. The next court case that I looked at was Mitchell versus Cedar Rapids Community School District. And this is, the student's name is, they're just going by DE, was a 9th grade student that was a special education student, typically was always supervised while at school. And she was found off campus with a 19-year-old boy after she had skipped the last period of the day. And later she had told her mother that they had engaged in sexual activity while they were off campus. And on the day that she missed school, while the teachers that were in that class did mark her as absent, no one ever contacted the mother at that time or any of the other school district officials after realizing that the student was absent from class, even though they knew that student typically was monitored at all times. And so the mother didn't know really until just getting an automated call that evening. And so the mother sued the school district for damages that her child sustained while she was gone out of the classroom. And I think that's, what would have happened. I think in our school district, all parties would have had to write a statement. The teacher followed the school's procedure because it looked like the school at the time, there was no expectation that all teachers would immediately call home. They just have an automated call system that calls later that evening. And so I think that I guess one proactive measure would be that when a student is absent, if it's a student that typically needs more supervision, that we would let the parents know sooner. And I also think that maybe if there's a way that these automated calls could go out when the student is absent, since it is automated, that would be maybe a better scenario than parents finding out several hours later, especially in a safety issue. And this particular situation, I think, goes back to that school district personnel should be aware of the standard of care that must be met for students, and that varies student to student and in different situations. So in this situation, they knew that this was a student that typically was supervised at all times. So it should be a little more worrisome when the student didn't show up, especially because the teacher was pretty sure she knew that she was with that older student. So in this situation, Pierce versus Hearn Independent School District, this took place in Texas, where a student was tragically killed in an ATV accident while working on a farm. And it was actually his agriculture teacher's farm. And so this teacher would take students in his classes out to the farm as part of the coursework. While getting that hands-on, real world application is great, the parents had not given permission for the students to leave the school. And so they were pretty upset, saying that the principal also knew that they were doing this and that it was fine. So they were suing the school district. However, a federal district judge dismissed the case, and then the decision was upheld in the U.S. Court of Appeals because there was no deliberate indifference found in that situation. They were not intentionally trying to harm students. So while it was something that I think they will get in trouble for, probably at the district, like within the job, the courts did not feel like they could award anything to the parents. I think in this situation, though, in our district, for sure, this teacher would have been placed on administrative leave and they would have conducted an investigation. We are repeatedly told that we may not take students anywhere off campus without parent permission. We can't walk across the street to the park without having parent permission. So this would for sure be a really big issue. I think, obviously, and I feel like our district has these, but having policies and procedures that students just do not leave campus without parent permission, and that administrators need to approve all off-campus trips prior to those events happening, so that there is just a standard procedure and everybody knows where they're going and what they're going to be doing when they're there. Just always have parent permission prior to removing students from school for any reason, and exercising responsibility to keep students safe through supervision and through training on equipment. While not the biggest issue in this situation, they were also riding on ATVs, and the student did not have a driver's license, and there's no way to know that he was trained in driving these. So there were several things that were not great in this situation. The next one is Barnett et al. Versus Caldwell, and this is when a student was killed while engaging in horseplay in the classroom when the teacher had stepped out of the room. And so these students were left in there unsupervised. And when asked about it, the teacher claimed at first that he was in the classroom. So that alone is an issue. And so later they realized that the teacher was not even in the room when this occurred. So there was no one in there watching these students. And so William's parents sued for negligence. He was not held liable for negligence since the discretionary act was not performed with malice or intent to cause injury. However, thinking about in my school, if this were to happen, the staff members will all be asked to write statements. I'm sure video would be watched to see what that teacher was doing during that time and if they were able to see anything that the students were doing. And the teacher for sure would have some disciplinary action for leaving the room and leaving students unsupervised. That is something else, again, that we talk about repeatedly is students cannot be left alone. They cannot be unsupervised. If you've got to step out, you need to always make sure that there's certified staff in place and different things like that. They all need to be given explicit guidance as to the expectations for supervision. So there should be some things in place that everybody in the building, all staff members know. And they should be in our staff handbook, just that it is our responsibility for supervising students when they're at school. And professionally, just maintaining a safe classroom environment by always having students supervise, never leave them alone where poor decisions can be made and students could be injured. This one is Cormier et al. Versus City of Lynn. This is when an elementary student was pushed down the stairs by another student. And at first he kind of appeared okay, was walking around, ended up being paralyzed. And the issue here, with the teacher anyway, was that this was not the first time that the student was bullied. And the parents are saying that they really felt like the school employees knew about it and knew that it was happening and did not do anything to protect their child. And so the parents sued for negligence, and the courts found that the teachers were not liable in tort relating to negligence related to bullying unless it was with a protected group, where they should expect that the bullying may be an issue. And I believe in this situation, the parents thought that that should have happened, but it did not. And I feel like in this situation, again, all staff members that were present, a part of this would be asked to write a statement. They would watch video. They would for sure have an investigation. I think there's some proactive measures for sure that could be in place, specifically when we're talking about bullying. And that is that there should be some kind of bullying referral system where students feel safe using that to say that they're being bullied. It can be reported maybe anonymously or not. And also then it documents in the system that people are aware that this is happening, and they don't have to claim they did or didn't know about it, because it would document that it had been reported. And then also maybe more things would be done to protect the students. Professionally, again, teachers have legal duty to provide a safe environment for students, and that includes bullying. And so if bullying is being reported, action must be taken to do as much as we possibly can to keep those students safe. There are my references, and I hope that you enjoy hearing about those court cases.